What was it like to live in a log cabin? While we're studying the American frontier experience, we really have to understand what it was like, what their houses were like, and what they were like to live in. In Catherine Parr Trail's book called The Backwoods of Canada, we get a great description of what it was like to live, at least in a poor person's log cabin. And Catherine Parr Trail, she was emigrating or moving out into the backcountry of Canada in the early 19th century, about 1834. And she earlier on did not have any experiences like this, so she didn't grow up in an environment like this. So she does a great job of telling us what it was like, at least from her eyes. Let me read to you a little of this. As I felt a great curiosity to see the interior of a log house, I entered the open doorway of the tavern, as the people termed it, under the pretext of buying a draught of milk. The interior of this rude dwelling presented no very inviting aspect. The walls were of rough, unhewn logs, filled between the chinks with moss and irregular wedges of wood to keep out the wind and the rain. The unplastered roof displayed the rafters, covered with moss and lichens green, yellow, and gray, above which might be seen the shingles, dyed to a fine mahogany red by the smoke, which refused to ascend the wide clay and stone chimney, to curl gracefully about the roof and seek its exit in the various crannies and apertures with which the roof and the sides of the building abounded. I'm so used to smoke not going up the chimney when you really want it to, so I can fully believe that. She goes on. The floor was of earth, which had become pretty hard and smooth through use. This hut reminded me of the one described by the 4 Russian sailors that were left to winter on the island of Spitzenbergen. Its furniture was of corresponding rudeness. A few stools, rough and unplaned, a deal table, which, from being manufactured from unseasoned wood, was divided by 3 wide-open seams and was only held together by its ill-shaped legs. There were 2 or 3 blocks of gray granite placed beside the hearth that served as seats for the children, with the addition of 2 or 3 beds raised a little above the ground by a frame of split cedars. And on these lowly couches lay extended 2 poor men, suffering under the wasting effects of lake fever, their yellow bilious faces strangely contrasted with the gay patchwork quilts that covered them. I thought that was pretty interesting. These guys probably have malaria or something very similar, and there they are in this very, very rude structure on these very simple beds, but they've got patchwork quilts, colorful patchwork quilts that cover them, probably one of their best possessions. She goes on. She says, beside the various immigrants, men, women, and children that lodged within the walls, the log house had tenants of another description. A fine calf occupied a pen in a corner. Some pigs roaming, grunting about in company with some 6 fowls. The most attractive objects were 3 snow-white pigeons that were meekly picking up crumbs and looking as if they were too pure and innocent to be inhabitants of such a place. Catherine goes on and on, describing what the backwoods of Canada was like, what it was like to set up a homestead in that area. Even toward the end of the book, she describes in the appendix how to make maple sugar and how to make vinegar, hop rising bread, which was like a sourdough, and even salt rising bread, which now that we actually know what's going on there, I'm not sure I'm very interested in that. Also soft soap and how to make candles. The book is chock full of just great descriptions. Now, this is Canada, early 19th century. But you can imagine these experiences and these scenes were exactly the same as that which is going on in North America all throughout the 17th and 18th and early 19th century. These experiences are very similar throughout this whole time period as you read these different journals and descriptions of what these backcountry houses were like. If you're interested in more about what this backcountry like, what this frontier experience was like, make sure to stay tuned as we get into more and more episodes. We've got a lot coming down the pike and some really exciting content. Also, if you want to sort of a heads up and you want to read ahead, this book is great. This is The Backwoods of Canada by Catherine Parr Trail, written about 1834, 1835. excellent description of what it was like here in the backcountry, and she is a very good person for describing these things. So it's a fun read. This one's available on our website. I'll make sure to put a link in the description. I want to thank everyone out there for coming along today as we discover what it was like to live on the frontier. And I want to thank you for all your tremendous support for everything we do on this channel, whether you support us via Patreon or whether you can just, give a great comment, a thumbs up, and share our videos. Thank you so much for all you do, and thanks for watching.